So everything worked out beautiful. Everything was working in our favor. It was like, from heaven above.
So at this point, what I would like to do is talk about the attitude to black skin, black models, and natural hair, and why you chose Black is Beautiful as your tagline, we would call it today, in 1962.
Well, the attitude at the time, well, let's take it. You had magazines, black magazines, Ebony magazine, where you didn't even ever see any model on the cover. I guess the exception would be George Bryant, which was on a couple of times. She was a singer, black and beautiful. But even when they described her, they would say, a handsome, colored little woman.
A handsome colored
woman? A handsome colored. I never heard women described as handsome prior to that. And colored, so they wouldn't even say a black woman. All right? Jet. You couldn't get a jet complexion woman on Jet magazine at that time. There was some other magazine, Tan and whatnot, 10 for 10, and whatnot. But so we looked at all of those things and said, we got to really make this a campaign. The term Black is Beautiful came from an article in the Amsterdam News, probably in 1927, when they were talking about Marcus Garvey. And they said, and one was the person who was defending Marcus Garvey, and they said all he did was to make people realize that black is beautiful. It's a camera thing. That all that he did was to make people realize that black is beautiful. And that's when we took that theme, Black is Beautiful, to be our theme for the show. We went on in '63. By now, Max Roach and Abbott Lincoln, and then traveled and contacted other people in other cities. And in Chicago, they put us in contact with Robert Show Club, who's, I forget his first name, but Mr. Roberts, who had several motels in Chicago, and Mr. Kelly's in Detroit, who had a large, one night it would be a skating rink, one night we had a ballroom, one night, and it was very innovative in making that work, that venue. So we booked a show in New York at the Audubon Ballroom for January 22nd. No, January 17th, 1963. And then following up with a road show in February, the 22nd and 23rd of '63 in Detroit and Chicago. So we did a show that was, by now all of the ballrooms except the Rock and Palace was too small for us to do it, so we did.
How many were you pulling in at that time?
Oh, let's see. About 1,000 people. About 1,000 people.
Per show?
Yeah, per show. And because that was the capacity of the ballrooms. So if you see the pictures of from the show in the Audubon Ballroom, you can see how they were almost, 10 deep, almost on top of it, looking like they were on top of each other. So that was a great success, and I went out right after the closing that show, the January show. I then ventured to Chicago to promote the shows that was coming up on February 22nd, and give out flyers and whatnot to stay. We got so much help there. It was, even when people came from other places to New York, we would give them, a lot of help and encouragement and whatnot, tell them what we were doing and showing them, find out what they were doing, where they were, and trying to get them to expand their ideas and whatnot. But in Chicago, when I went to Chicago, here we are. 18 below zero and 20, 18 below zero and 16 inches of snow, or 16 below zero and 18 inches of snow. I forget what it was, but it was. I mean, here we are in February in Chicago, my first time to Chicago, and Abby and I would go to a radio station. I remember with Cup's show, which was a morning show that was very, very popular. And football singers, they like the co-host, like, you know, with this white guy, Herb Thompson. And we had to go for an interview at, it must have been 4 or 5 in the morning. That's when they thought it was like probably the first guest on. And coming up to that place, right on the lake, the Great Lakes there, I mean, you see columns of smoke. It's so cold, it's like hundreds of columns of smoke coming out. I mean, really, really freezing. But we weathered it. And we had a really great interview. The show went off great.
How many people attended that show in that weather?
Well, Robert Show Club didn't hold that many people. When the ballroom was a club and lounge, but I think it was about 300-400 people or so. It was capacity. And in Detroit and Chicago, there were two brothers that Mac and Abby had contacted. They were living there. They were going to Wayne State University. Leroy, Omar Shabazz, and he was very important brother too. Who they both were so inspired that they went on and went to Africa and started teaching there at the university there after his graduation. Leroy Mitchell, and that was a great success. So from then on, when we came back to New York, we had to get rock and powder. It was the biggest ballroom we had. They had held 4,200 people. But since we were doing the fashion show, we used a lot of the space for fashion. So we were setting up for 1,500, which we did every show we did for Rock the House, then on after Max and Abby had, had left, because Abby stayed with us until she left to go to Hollywood to Nothing But a Man with Ivan Dixon. And from then on, we kept it on. We kept the shows going through 1968. And so now.
How were the shows financed? And first of all, so how did you guys putting on a show, even at that time, for a group of people in the community? How did you finance the shows?
We ourselves put together whatever monies we had, put the deposit on the place, started promoting, started taking to them, didn't use any of at that time we didn't even know about any grants and whatnot, but we would have taken because our team through the African National Pioneer Movement and whatnot was self-determination, do it yourself. So we didn't even accept any other outside money. We didn't look for it and it wasn't offered either. But getting back to Chicago, when we got to Chicago, we got so much help. I'm telling you, in photographing, and I would make my living as a photographer, and I've always done that. But I was shooting a Randall Garland Jazz Festival in 1959 and 60. And I met a brother from Chicago, named Abernathy. And when I was going out to Chicago, I decided, let me look up this card. So I got his card, gave him a call, someone's coming out. It so happened that his father owned a cab company out there, Abernathy Cabs. And so when I got there, I contacted them, and they were so helpful. I mean, they would be on the spot every time I needed a cab. Sometimes they wouldn't even charge me. I would go into a bar, and you know, I could never do this in New York. I had taken the slide projector out to Chicago and Detroit with me. And they would let me set up the slide projector and project pictures of the shows and everything else. Now, to do that and take people away from the bar in Harlem, they wouldn't have that. I went to the beauty parlor, not beauty parlor, but the beauty school. testing.
Okay, we're going to break for a few minutes. And for those who just arrived, we're speaking to Kwame Brathwaite, who was one of the leaders of the AJAS and the National, what's the name of the art group?
The art group was involved in this at that time. AJAS, the African Jazz Art Society studio, started the Jazz Art Society and got the first girl involved, in it.
Okay, today's the 50th anniversary of Black is Beautiful, and he is, if you know this is from memory, and I cannot remember what happened last year, but he is telling us the story, and this is Fabian Burrell. She's a reporter with the Caribbean Life and the Beacon.
I used to write for them.
Okay, and we'd like to thank the Alchemist Lounge. There are many in our communities who hold our histories, and our goal is to bring that history together before we lose them.
Before murder, and wanted the rights to everything you wrote.
Exactly.
Including
I had to
what
sign
you
the
wrote
paper.
prior to that. You signed it?
I had to.
You were writing for me before then, huh?
Yes, I've
Yes.
been writing for them.
I
for
refuse to do it.
10
I
years.
had 8 days. You get that because that's not even legal.
I know.
Not illegal.
One of the things we're going to be discussing after this thing is how do we take the lessons of the past and move it forward? And how do we, because the same things you're saying, I'm hearing today, it's not that cold out there. There were 40 people signed up and didn't come out. We are apathetic and we're blaming everyone else and not taking responsibility.
Not the weather.
It's not the weather. It may be the transport system, but you know it's Saturday and you give time for transportation.
Yeah.
So I'm part of the fashion tech community and I'm seeing such growth. Companies that in 6 months are getting 40 million in funding. And yet when I come to my community, it's like two completely different worlds. And something has to give, something has to be done. They did this without the internet. They barely had phones, some of them.
Right. No cell phones for sure.
No cell phones. And yet
No answering machines either.
Not at that time,
Not like
right?
that.
many of them were trying to go to college, trying to support families, and yet we make excuses. So, is the mic back on? No. Anyway, so one
I
of
just
the...
finished that thought about it.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
And in Chicago, the beauticians, they invited me to the beauty school. And to show the people whatnot, because what they did is what they should have been doing more. That added to what they were doing, you know, and adding that service. Instead of saying, this is going to hurt us and taking the negative.
So the Chicago beauticians started adding
To, okay,
the natural...
we give it to you. You didn't have to lose the customer.
Oh, so they offer the customer...
Exactly.
They offer the... Okay. So many of us in New York believe that the natural hair care movement started here, but we've got to thank Chicago for adopting it, really.
Well, as a beautician, yeah. And now, you know, you go to Detroit or Chicago or anybody left in Detroit, I don't know, they're all leaving it because the industry is on that. But you go to DC, you have a lot of African, hairstyles, salons.
What was, you mentioned briefly that you were at that time a reporter, a photographer?
Freelance, I've been all my life until now. I probably worked 2 years with somebody else, in my life. And that was in the very early part.
So let me ask you that. When did the mainstream black magazines, the Ebonies and Jets, when did they start accepting? Because when I'm doing research as a designer and I'm looking, we all see it credited, the African in fashion credited to the late 1967, 1968, and to Yves Saint Laurent, and these are black journals saying this. So when did mainstream, because we're still having that fashion, that issue today, when did the mainstream, the Essence, the Ebony, the Jet, start including Black is Beautiful into their repertoire, which by the time I was introduced to them in the 70s, I knew that's where I found my black fashion. So what was the transition from there, not accepting the dark skin models and the black, no jet models on jet, and no ebony models on ebony? How did that evolve?
Well, after black people picketed them right in front of them.
They picketed?
Picketed Johnson Publications right there at 6th Avenue and 50th Street offices. And then black people picketing them right downtown in White Manhattan. And that's when they started, by embarrassment, started.
When was this?
This was probably 66 or 67.
Oh, that's when they start crediting the blackness
Yeah.
in fact. Oh, okay, so now I understand.
Not sure of the year. Now, of course, Essence wasn't around until 1969. Let me say 69, yeah. But I did their 5th anniversary cover, and that was 74, 79, yeah, like 74. Ebony, they set up a shooting to do a black woman uncovered in hair natural. And they got a black woman and whatnot, the model. They first started, they tried to get use one of our models, but they wanted to put so much makeup and stuff on it that we, shady fields and whatnot. They got another outside and whatnot. And at that time, you didn't have makeup that was, full of black women.
Right.
And you have these, had to pick makeup that looked a little ashy or something like that.
The white base,
complexions, as before the whole new industry started with makeup for black women. Yeah, so it was about that at that time, but I believe it was 67 when that picket.
Who was the first dark skin model, if can you remember?
Dark skin model?
On the cover of one of the magazines.
Cover, but she wins first one. That was the first big black model that was featured in, not so much by the magazine, because those were ads in the magazine that you would see.
Oh, so they were featured first in ads in the magazine,
yes,
and then
the little campaign. That was the time it started, trying to reach the, community. Oh goodness, Helen Williams.
Helen Williams.
Yeah.
Okay.
Carlene.
Helen Williams.
As a photographer, what was your access to the other side of the industry? How could you access non-black shows, etc.? Were there issues in that area?
Well, I didn't even try some of the fashion, the 7th Avenue fashion pieces until about later in the 70s. And it was iffy. I could always get things published. So, where there was room, I could get in there. There wasn't many black photographers shooting the collections and whatnot. But I did make, inways in that. Not for the big publication, but then getting some of that stuff published in the local magazines and newspapers and whatnot. I wasn't interested until they started putting black models into the shows. I wasn't even interested in it.
And can you recall when that started?
Vaguely, not really strong until the beginning 80s.
That way?
Yeah. No. I mean, early 70s. One of the turning points was 1973. In Versailles, they were having a fashion, the big annual fashion collection, and of course the French designers and the Italian designers were the biggest names. There was an American designer that came in, you saw wrong.
Was that the show with Beth Addison and they?
Yes, that was Showman, and that's the show that turned the whole fashion industry around. It wasn't something around, I'm sorry. But anyhow, and there was a couple of black designers there too, and they had to make a statement. And they had several black models. Beth Ann Hardison has a Beth Ann agency now, but she was one of them. There was
Audrey Small was around back then?
no, she was modeling the Ebony Fashion Show. She was in that show. And we're getting a blank on some of the names, and we can.
Pat Cleveland?
Pat Cleveland was one of them. I'll probably come back to it.
Turning Heads, what's her name?
Hmm?
That woman from Turning Heads Down.
Peggy Dillard?
Peggy?
Peggy was not.
Dillard?
She was
No.
might have been.
She was later.
Yes. But we might be able to add that.
I'll add that, I'll do the
Right.
research. I
Yes,
have that
please.
somewhere in a
As a
file.
matter of fact, you can go on the Metropolitan Museum of Art's website right now, and they have a thing, because they just did something, and I missed it. I've been asking several people about it, because I knew about that big event. When they tore the place down, I mean, when they had all of the French designers, you know, the other designers, French and Italian and whatnot, and they had these elaborate sets and everything else. And the set design that was designed for the American group was designed, and for some reason they had to change the design of which they wouldn't fit. So they had to go without any background in the back. But when the sisters came out there and started walking that walk, you know, and Berthan took the cape and threw it somewhere. I mean, the whole place went up, man, and they turned the place down. And so from then on, they started including black models in the European shows and everything else. And they were doing better in Europe than they were doing here in the U.S. But I started shooting the collections, I guess, right about that time, because that's when black models started coming into the show.
Were you there at that show?
No, I wish I were. I mean, that was something I wish I would. I wish we were videotaping at that time too. I don't think there's any video of that. Any video. But you can go online to Metropolitan Museum and you can see a recent interview, because they had a reception for them last year. Yeah, last year.
So we're looking, what I found out, I'm a designer and I filmed with Kwame when you shot some of my work. And then later on, I think we did it for Everybody's Magazine.
Right.
And then later on, while we were speaking, when I was working on the collective incubated on a 4W Circle, and it was only a couple weeks ago that you spoke about the economic plans and impact that your group had planned, and we started discussing that after 50 years, we are no closer to some of those. So let's do a side by side. If you can, and you have very good memory, recall some of the economic intents and impact that you hope to achieve.
Well, it was in the 90s that I really started. I was doing fashion shows and producing fashion shows even after the Naturally show. All right. We did the Naturally show from '62 regularly to '79, '80 or so, and then we would celebrate the 10th anniversary. You know, '92, 2002, etc. on the anniversary. Which was the first year. And then we did the anniversary on the 10th anniversary. So, but I started producing other shows. By now, we had more and more black models that were naturally all natural, and most of them weren't. But we were promoting Afrocentric fashions and wearable art. Promoting black designers. One of the shows that I had created, which ran a series of shows, Afromotive, associated with retailing individually manufactured designs by Africans, Afromotive, that was African. And the idea was to get these designs, because most black designers, they design for people, but it's mostly one of a kind. one of the few people that were manufacturing was Michoud, all right? But they didn't have the means to actually produce and mass produce, and that's the only way you're going to get money is to mass produce. All right. I do know that Marvin Sin, who does handbags, I think he's a relative, he has a factory in North Carolina, that we were trying to see if we can get more people to get together and utilize that for mass production. But to now, I don't know that that has happened.
So as you go along, I'll tell you what is happening. Right now, I'm working with this Jonathan Adewame in Nigeria. Esther Joseph is Kuamba Designs out of St. Lucia. We have Rodney Alexander, and I was hoping to get online with Skype with them, but I didn't see anyone, who is in Trinidad, and we have another couple of designers from Trinidad. I am from Trinidad originally. And we've been put in contact with some of the designers from Jamaica. What is happening is that Jonathan is leading the impact. Jonathan, for those who don't know who he is, led, if you saw African bridal wear in essence from about the mid-1980s till recently, that was Nigerian Fashion and Fabrics. And he returned...
Probably every one of our shows in that time.
Yes, and he returned to Africa. Now he's helping build the African industry there, and he is planning a factory. They have discovered a silkworm factory, so they'll be making the silks and a production, and so that they can produce the garments for the designers here and various parts. Esther is working on her production for herself and others. She's actually working on some samples for a designer from the US for us right now. So it will be Rodney, and so will some of the others. And so we've made that progress in terms of individually having these people say, look, this is my problem, someone else has it, we can work with it. I know we've been trying to work with someone in South Carolina, and we have contact in others. So that has arrived. But getting them all together, that's the hard part. So next, what was some of the other, you spoke about group buying?
Well, not so much group buying, but there's several shows that I did, one called Fashion Nations, fashions from various nations, you know, African and Caribbean nations. I mean,
well, and the sad thing about it is that the formula is there. We have Nwala Mode is supposed to be next month, which is supposed to showcase African designers of the ethnic majority. There are the traditional shows that are going on. The problem is, as someone who, my end of it has been the business of fashion, is that none of these designers have a business format or a business setup. I have come to the point where I have funding, but I cannot present any of those designers until they have straightened their business up. They won't even come to a meeting. You know, so we still are at that point. So and it's not just fashion. This is across the creative industry. If we do something here every Sunday, we'll have it tomorrow, every other Sunday. And the goal is to educate on what type of business models are existing. And the creative sector, there is a company called Fab, started 6 months ago. They focus on design, so whatever, it's pillows, watches, great design. In 6 months, these are their numbers. They have 1.5 million members. They earn 200,000 in sales per day, and they have achieved 40 million in funding. They just bought a site called a fashion site. Not one designer I know can qualify because they don't have their production line management or their business in line. In order to sell 200,000 of an item, they're a flash sale site, they sell stuff. In order to sell 200,000 of an item, you have to know that you can guarantee that production. You have to know